We're incredibly grateful for your support. Before we begin today's tale, tell us, which city or country are you joining us from? We love connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, The Settlement. Russell Hargrove stood in the empty living room of what was once his dream home, now stripped of everything but dust and memories. 15 years of marriage, dissolved in 9 months of vicious legal battles. The divorce had been finalized yesterday, and Vanessa had wasted no time claiming her spoils. "It's just stuff, Russ," said Dexter Sullivan, leaning against the doorframe. Dex had been Russell's closest friend since college, the only one who hadn't disappeared when the divorce proceedings turned ugly. $3 million in assets, the vacation property in Maine, and both cars, Russell replied, his voice eerily calm. "And I get this." He gestured to the single item Vanessa had left behind, a mediocre landscape painting that had hung in their guest bathroom. Russell wasn't born wealthy. He'd built his security consulting firm from nothing, working 18-hour days while Vanessa spent his money and, as he later discovered, spent her afternoons with Leo Donovan, his former VP of operations. The betrayal had come as a shock 6 months into their business expansion, when he'd walked in on them in his office after hours. "Your lawyer was garbage," Dex remarked. "Should have fought harder." "Vanessa's father is Judge Carlton," Russell replied with a bitter smile. The deck was stacked from the beginning. He picked up the painting, a poorly executed mountain scene with a solitary cabin. She knew exactly what she was doing, leaving this. One final insult. What Vanessa didn't know was that Russell had changed during the divorce proceedings. The easygoing, trusting man she'd manipulated for years had hardened. He'd learned that forgiveness was for the weak. Betrayal demanded retribution. "What now?" Dex asked as they carried the painting to Russell's rented apartment. "I rebuild," Russell answered. But rebuilding wasn't all he had planned. The painting sat on Russell's floor for weeks as he focused on salvaging what remained of his company. Leo had taken half their clients when he left, and the scandal of the affair had cost them several more. Russell worked methodically, rebuilding relationships and securing new contracts. He slept 4 hours a night, fueled by determination and quiet rage. One night, after securing a major new client, Russell returned home and actually looked at the painting for the first time. It truly was atrocious. The perspective was wrong, the colors muddy. He decided to throw it away, but as he lifted it, the frame came loose on one side. Russell was about to toss it in the dumpster when he noticed something on the back of the canvas. Peeling away the brown paper backing, he discovered a series of numbers written in faded ink. 41.3827 degrees north, 72.4985 degrees west, VFD 92153 UN char. Coordinates and some kind of code. Russell stared at the numbers, puzzled by their presence on this worthless painting. He recalled Vanessa's smirk when she told the lawyers she was generously leaving him his favorite artwork. There was more to this painting than met the eye. Chapter 2, The Discovery. The coordinates led to a remote area in Connecticut, a 2-hour drive from Russell's apartment. Before heading there, Russell decided to learn more about the painting itself. He carefully removed it from the frame and examined it under bright light. The artist's signature was faded but legible. H. Whitney, 1973. An unremarkable painting by an unknown artist. Yet someone had hidden coordinates on it. Why? Russell contacted Miriam Fowler, an art appraiser who had once consulted for his firm on a security project for a museum. She agreed to examine the painting the next day. "This is interesting," Miriam said, scrutinizing the canvas through a magnifying glass. "Interesting good or interesting bad?" Russell asked. "Both." She pointed to the signature. Hammond Whitney was a completely unremarkable Sunday painter in the 1970s. His work sell for maybe $50 at garage sales. So it is worthless. The painting is. But look at this. She turned it over and pointed to the wooden stretcher bars. "See these markings? This frame was custom-made by Hensley's. They exclusively framed works from major galleries in the 70s and 80s. No one would put a Whitney in a frame that cost 10 times the painting's value." Russell leaned closer. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying this frame originally held something valuable. And She hesitated. There's something else. She pointed to almost imperceptible brush strokes in the lower right corner of the painting. Someone painted over another signature here. Russell felt a surge of adrenaline. Could the painting be a forgery? Something valuable made to look worthless? It's possible. I need to run some tests. That evening, Russell searched property records for the coordinates. They pointed to undeveloped woodland owned by a holding company called Artemis Properties, established in 1975. The company's ownership was hidden behind layers of legal entities. The alphanumeric code remained a mystery. Russell tried various decryption methods without success. Whatever it unlocked, it wasn't obvious. He was still working when his phone rang at 11:30 p.m. The caller ID showed Penelope Carlton, Vanessa's younger sister. Russell, I'm sorry to call so late. Penny, is everything okay? Despite the divorce, Russell had always gotten along with Penelope, who disapproved of her sister's behavior. Vanessa was here for dinner. She was on the phone with Leo, and I overheard them talking about a painting. She sounded worried, asked if he was sure you couldn't know what it was. I thought you should know. Russell's grip tightened on the phone. Thanks, Penny. Was there anything else? Just that Leo kept saying the numbers were safe. Does that mean anything to you? It meant everything. The next morning, Miriam called with news. Russell, I did some preliminary analysis. There's definitely another painting underneath. The overlayers are cheap acrylic, probably applied in the 70s. Beneath that is oil paint, much older. How much older? I need better equipment to be certain, but based on the craquelure patterns visible under UV light, potentially 18th century. Russell's mind raced. How valuable could an 18th century painting be? Depends on the artist. Anywhere from a few thousand to millions. After hanging up, Russell received a text from Dex. Vanessa called me asking if you'd mentioned any painting. Said it has sentimental value and she wants it back. Offered $5,000. Russell smiled coldly. $5,000 for a painting worth $50? Or millions for a hidden masterpiece? He needed to visit those coordinates. Chapter 3. The Confrontation. Russell took a day off from work and drove to the Connecticut coordinates. The location was deep in the woods, accessible only by a narrow dirt road. After hiking half a mile from where he had to park, Russell found himself in a small clearing with nothing but an old concrete foundation, partially reclaimed by nature. Using a metal detector he'd rented, Russell swept the area systematically. After an hour, it beeped near what appeared to be the remains of a chimney. Russell dug through layers of dirt and debris until he struck metal, a small, rusted box. Inside was a key and a yellowed envelope. The envelope contained a faded photograph of a stern-looking man in 1970s attire standing beside a painting. The same mountain scene, but clearly hung in an elegant home, not a bathroom. On the back was written, "Insurance against a rainy day." The key opens the truth. Russell examined the key. It was old, possibly for a safety deposit box. There was no bank name, just a series of numbers etched into the metal. 92,153, part of the code on the painting. As Russell drove home, his phone buzzed repeatedly with calls from an unknown number. Finally, he answered. Russell, it's Leo. We need to talk. Russell's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. We have nothing to discuss. It's about the painting Vanessa left. She made a mistake. We'd like to buy it back. Not interested. $10,000, Leo said quickly. For that worthless thing. It's a fair offer. If it's worthless, why offer 10 grand? Russell countered. A pause. Vanessa has sentimental attachment to it. It was her grandmother's. Funny, she never mentioned that during the 15 years it hung in our guest bathroom. Russell ended the call. That evening, as Russell researched vintage safety deposit box systems, a pounding at his door startled him. Through the peephole, he saw Vanessa and Leo, both looking agitated. Russell opened the door, but blocked the entrance. Vanessa had aged during their separation. New lines around her eyes, her blonde hair now highlighted to cover encroaching gray. Leo stood slightly behind her, his once confident posture now tense. Where is it? Vanessa demanded without preamble. Hello to you too, Vanessa. The painting, Russell. I need it back. It was part of the settlement. My only part, if you recall. Vanessa's facade cracked. I made a mistake. I'll pay you for it. 20,000, Leo interjected. Cash right now. He held up an envelope. Russell leaned against the doorframe. It's interesting how a worthless painting suddenly commands such a high price. 30,000, Vanessa countered desperately. Did you check the back of it before you so generously bestowed it upon me? Russell asked. Their expressions confirmed his suspicions. They hadn't known about the numbers until recently. Give it back, Vanessa suddenly shrieked, attempting to push past him. Leo tried to restrain her, whispering urgently in her ear. But they didn't know. Russell said softly, more to himself than to them. They didn't know he'd already found the box, already seen the photograph, already started unraveling whatever secret had them panicking at his door. Russell, you don't understand what you're involved in, Leo said, his voice low. This isn't just about us. You have 30 seconds to leave before I call the police for harassment, Russell replied calmly. Whatever game you're playing, I'm not interested in your rules. As they retreated, Russell heard Vanessa hiss at Leo. I told you we should have destroyed it years ago. Russell closed the door, his mind racing. The painting, the coordinates, the key, they were all connected to something significant enough to make his ex-wife and her lover desperate. And Russell was just getting started unraveling their secret. Chapter 4. The Revelation. The first bank Russell tried confirmed his suspicions. The numbers corresponded to a safety deposit box system they'd used until the 1990s. However, their records showed the box had been emptied and the account closed in 1987. The revelation came from an unexpected source. Over drinks, Russell mentioned the safety deposit box numbers to Dex, who worked in insurance. Wait, that format sounds familiar, Dex said, frowning. Those old number boxes were sometimes listed in insurance policies. Let me check something. 2 days later, Dex called Russell to his office and showed him a digitized insurance document from 1975. This took some digging in the archives, Dex explained. It's a specialized art insurance policy issued to Artemis Properties. The items listed include a safety deposit box with a number sequence matching yours. Russell scanned the document. What was insured inside the box? Documentation proving provenance and ownership of the Mountain Retreat by Thomas Cole, valued at $450,000 in 1975. Russell's breath caught. Thomas Cole was a famous 19th-century American painter, founder of the Hudson River School. That painting would be worth millions today, Dex added. But here's the kicker. It's listed as missing, presumed destroyed in the Westbrook Gallery fire of 1972. Russell immediately called Miriam and explained what he'd discovered. Thomas Cole, she gasped. Russell, if that's true, we're talking about a lost masterpiece worth $8 to $10 million today. Could the painting I Have Be the Cole painted over to disguise it? It's possible. The dimensions match typical Cole landscapes. We need to do proper testing. Infrared reflectography would reveal the underlying image without damaging it. Russell arranged for the tests, but kept searching for the remaining piece of the puzzle, what the letters in the code meant and where the key fit. The answer came from Penelope Carlton, who called Russell in distress. Russell, I think Vanessa's in trouble. She and Leo are fighting constantly. I overheard them mentioning a safety deposit box and something about United National Harbor Bank. She was screaming that he had no right to hide it from her all these years. United National Harbor Bank, UNCHAR. The letters from the code. Research revealed that United National had been absorbed by larger banks through a series of mergers in the 1990s. Their main branch had been converted to offices, but the original vault remained intact in the basement, now used for document storage. Russell needed access to that vault. Through his security company, Russell contacted the building management about upgrading their security systems. During the consultation, he managed to access the old vault area. The numbering system was still visible on the walls, and in a forgotten corner was a section of vintage safety deposit boxes that had never been removed during renovation. Box VFD 92153 was still there, tucked away and forgotten. With maintenance workers nearby, Russell couldn't attempt to open it. He'd need to return after hours, something his security expertise made possible, if not legal. That night, as Russell contemplated his next move, Miriam called with the test results. Russell, it's confirmed. Under the Whitney painting is an authentic Thomas Cole. The infrared imaging clearly shows his distinctive style and even his signature. You have a lost masterpiece worth millions. And the rightful owner? Russell asked. According to the provenance documents I found, it was owned by the Westbrook Gallery, but presumed destroyed in the 1972 fire. Insurance would have paid out to the gallery's owners. Legally, after 50 years, if you possess it with no competing claims, you could establish ownership. Russell thanked her and hung up, pieces falling into place. The painting had somehow survived the fire. Someone had painted over it to hide its value, then secured the documentation proving its provenance in a safety deposit box. That person had created the Artemis Properties Holding Company to maintain the land where additional proof was hidden. But who and why? The answer hit Russell like a thunderbolt. Leo was older than Vanessa by 15 years. He would have been in his 20s during the gallery fire. In Vanessa's angry words, he had no right to hide it from her all these years, suggested Leo had kept secrets even from her. Leo hadn't just stolen Russell's wife. Years ago, he had stolen the painting too. Chapter 5. The Infiltration. Breaking into the building after hours was relatively simple for someone with Russell's security background. He'd identified the blind spots in the surveillance system during his consultation and used his legitimate access credentials to enter the main floor. The basement vault was another matter. The modern security system protected the front entrance, but Russell had noticed an overlooked maintenance access during his earlier visit. Using specialized tools, he bypassed the simpler lock and slipped into the vault area through the service corridor. The old safety deposit boxes stood like forgotten sentinels in the corner. Russell located box VFD 92153 and inserted the key from the buried container. It turned with a satisfying click. Inside was a manila envelope containing gallery documentation, insurance papers, and photographs of the Thomas Cole painting before it was painted over. Most importantly, there was a bill of sale showing the painting had been legitimately purchased by the gallery in 1963. Also in the envelope was a newspaper clipping about the gallery fire, with the name Leonard Donato circled, a young employee who had heroically attempted to save artworks from the blaze. A younger Leo, using his birth name. Russell photographed everything with his phone, then carefully replaced the contents and relocked the box. He had what he needed. As he exited through the service corridor, Russell heard voices. Pressing himself against the wall, he watched as Leo and Vanessa entered the vault area through the main entrance. Leo had keys. He must have maintained access through connections from his time working there. "It's gone," Leo hissed after checking the box. "He's already been here. How could he figure it all out so quickly?" Vanessa asked, panic in her voice. "Because you left him the damn painting instead of bringing it with you like I told you to." Leo snapped. "You thought you were being clever, humiliating him with a worthless picture. Now he knows everything." "Not everything," Vanessa replied. "He doesn't know about the insurance fraud." Russell's eyes widened. Insurance fraud. If he exposes the painting as authentic, the insurance company will demand their $450,000 back, with 50 years of interest and penalties, Leo said. "They could charge me with fraud. I'd lose everything." "We need to destroy the painting," Vanessa insisted. "Without it, there's no proof." Leo shook his head. "It's worth $10 million. We need to get it back, not destroy it." "And how do you suggest we do that?" "Russell won't sell it back, now that he knows." Leo's voice dropped to a whisper, but Russell caught his chilling words. "We don't ask him to sell it. We take it, and make sure he can't talk about it afterward." Russell slipped away as they continued arguing, his mind racing. They were desperate enough to consider violence. He needed to act fast. Outside, Russell called Dex. "I need a safe place to store something valuable immediately." "My brother's gallery has a secure vault," Dex replied. "What's going on?" "I'll explain everything. But first, I need your help with something else." The next morning, Russell arrived at his office to find Detective Amara Washington waiting for him. "Mr. Hargrove, your ex-wife has filed a complaint alleging you stole family property during your divorce. Specifically, a valuable painting that wasn't disclosed in the settlement." Russell smiled. "I have exactly one painting from my marriage, Detective. The only item I was allowed to keep in the settlement. I'd be happy to show you the court documents. After reviewing the divorce settlement, which clearly listed wall art from guest bathroom as Russell's property, Detective Washington looked skeptical. Mrs. Hargrove claims this painting is actually a family heirloom worth substantial money. Interesting that she didn't mention that during our 15-year marriage or during the 9-month divorce proceedings, Russell replied. I'd be happy to show you the painting. It's a rather mediocre landscape that hung in our guest bathroom. The detective accompanied Russell to Dex's brother's gallery, where the painting, the Whitney forgery side showing, was now displayed. This is what she's claiming is valuable. Detective Washington asked doubtfully. Apparently so. My ex-wife's tastes have always been expensive, but even I'm surprised she's claiming this as value. After the detective left, Dex joined Russell. She's trying to use the police to get it back. And that's not all they're planning, Russell replied grimly, telling Dex about the conversation he'd overheard. They're desperate enough to consider violence. You should go to the police with this. Russell shook his head. Not yet. I need more than overheard threats. I need to force them to reveal everything. How? Russell's expression hardened. By giving them exactly what they want, a chance to take the painting. Chapter 6. The Betrayal. Russell's plan required precise timing and his complete vulnerability, qualities that made Dex extremely uncomfortable. This is insane, Dex protested. You're setting yourself up as bait for people who've already discussed harming you. It's the only way to expose everything at once, Russell insisted. The gallery opening is perfect, public enough to keep me safe, private enough to give them opportunity. Dex's brother Alden was hosting an exclusive showing at his gallery. The Whitney forgery would be displayed in a back room as part of a forgotten Americana collection. Russell had arranged a small reception area adjacent to the display, where he would host potential clients. And you're certain they'll make a move? Dex asked. Vanessa's sister confirmed they're planning to attend. They can't resist the opportunity. What Russell hadn't told Dex was that he'd sent anonymous tips to both an insurance fraud investigator and Detective Washington, suggesting they might find evidence of art theft if they attended the gallery opening. The evening of the showing arrived. Russell mingled with guests while keeping a watchful eye for Leo and Vanessa. They arrived separately, Leo first, then Vanessa 30 minutes later, pretending not to know each other. Russell deliberately isolated himself in the back reception area, making himself an easy target. After most guests had moved to the main gallery for the formal presentation, Russell observed Leo slipping toward the room housing the Whitney forgery. As expected, Leo entered the display room, quickly examined the painting, and then moved to the adjacent storage closet. Russell had earlier planted one of his company's hidden cameras there, allowing him to watch as Leo hid inside. Moments later, Vanessa approached Russell. Could we speak privately? About the painting? Of course, Russell replied, allowing her to guide him toward the display room. They were alone with the forgery. I know what you've discovered, Vanessa said, her voice low. Leo told me everything. Did he tell you he stole the painting during the gallery fire? That he committed insurance fraud? That he painted over a masterpiece and has been hiding it for decades? Vanessa's expression shifted from practiced contrition to cold calculation. He saved that painting from burning. The insurance company got paid by the gallery's policy. Nobody lost anything. Except me, Russell replied. I lost 15 years to a marriage built on lies. Don't be so dramatic. You were a stepping stone, Russell. I married you because you were ambitious and controllable. Leo and I have been together since before I met you. We just needed your resources to get where we needed to be. The shock must have shown on Russell's face, because Vanessa laughed cruelly. Did you think Leo seduced me away from my loving marriage? Please, it was always him, always the plan. She glanced at the painting. Now, we can do this easily or difficultly. Give us the real painting, the one you've had restored, and we disappear from your life forever. And if I don't, the closet door opened, and Leo emerged holding a gun. Then we take it anyway, and you have an unfortunate accident. What they didn't realize was that Russell had switched the paintings. The one hanging on the wall wasn't the Whitney forgery, but a reproduction. The real painting, with the Cole masterpiece underneath, was securely stored in the gallery's vault. They also didn't know about the microphones capturing every word of their confession, transmitting to Detective Washington and the insurance investigator waiting in Alden's office. "So your entire relationship was a con," Russell said, loud enough for the microphones. 15 years of marriage, just to access my resources. "Don't take it personally," Leo smirked, motioning with the gun. "Vanessa's very good at making men feel special. Now, where's the real Cole painting?" Before Russell could answer, the display room door burst open. Detective Washington entered, weapon drawn, followed by uniformed officers. "Drop the weapon," she commanded. In the confusion, Vanessa lunged for the painting on the wall, ripping it from its display. Leo swung his gun toward the detective. Russell never saw the shot that followed. Only Leo falling backward, the gun clattering from his hand. Vanessa screamed as officers tackled her, the reproduction painting tumbling to the floor. Later, as paramedics took Leo away with a shoulder wound and Vanessa was escorted to a police car in handcuffs, Detective Washington approached Russell. "You took quite a risk, Mr. Hargrove." "Worth it to hear the truth finally," Russell replied. "Did you get everything you need?" Conspiracy, attempted armed assault, and the insurance investigator is particularly interested in their confession about the art theft and fraud. They'll both be facing significant charges. She studied him. "Though I'm curious, where's the actual Thomas Cole painting?" Russell smiled thinly. "That's a conversation I should have with the insurance company first, don't you think?" Chapter 7. The Negotiation. 2 days after the gallery incident, Russell sat across from Howard Jenkins, chief investigator for Heritage Insurance Partners, the successor company to the firm that had paid out the claim for the destroyed Cole painting in 1972. "Let me be clear, Mr. Hargrove," Jenkins said stiffly. "That painting is technically stolen property. The insurance settlement transferred ownership rights to our company." Technically, Russell agreed, but proving that in court would be problematic for several reasons. Russell laid out his case methodically. First, the painting had been in his possession through a legal divorce settlement. Second, the insurance company had written off the painting as destroyed over 50 years ago and would face substantial public relations issues fighting a divorced man for his only settlement asset. Third, art ownership laws included provisions for good faith possession after extended periods. Most importantly, Russell concluded, "I have evidence suggesting your company may have been negligent in its original investigation of the gallery fire." Russell placed a folder on the table containing copies of documents he'd found in the safety deposit box. Among them was a letter from the original claims adjuster questioning whether proper fire inspections had been conducted at the gallery prior to issuing the policy. "These records suggest your predecessor company may have been aware of fire code violations at the Westbrook Gallery, but issued the policy anyway. That could open a substantial liability issue if it became public." Jenkins' expression soured. "What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Hargrove?" "A compromise. The painting is authenticated and sold at auction. Heritage Insurance receives 40% of the proceeds to satisfy the original claim. I retain 60% as the current legal possessor." "That's absurd. We would need at least 70%. 50-50, Russell countered. "And Heritage publicly acknowledges my role in recovering this lost masterpiece, with no mention of the original fraud. Your company looks heroic for recovering lost art instead of like victims of a 50-year-old insurance scam." After 4 hours of negotiation, they settled on a 55-45 split in the insurance company's favor, with a joint press release portraying the recovery as a collaborative effort. As Russell left the meeting, he received a call from Detective Washington. "Thought you'd want to know. Leonard Donovan is being charged with insurance fraud, attempted assault, conspiracy, and illegal possession of a firearm. With his prior record, he's looking at 15 to 20 years. "Prior record?" Russell asked, surprised. "Turns out Leo Donovan has quite a history. His real name is Leonard Donato. Before he reinvented himself, he had convictions for art theft and fraud in the early 1970s. He was sentenced to 5 years, but only served 2. The pieces continued falling into place. Leo had been a professional art thief before the gallery fire, which explained his ability to recognize the Cole painting's value and his knowledge of how to hide it. And Vanessa? Russell asked. Conspiracy charges, attempted theft, and we're investigating financial crimes based on records seized from their home. The prosecutor is offering a deal if she testifies against Donovan. After ending the call, Russell sat in his car, contemplating how thoroughly his life had been manipulated. His marriage, his business partnerships, even his friendships had been filtered through Vanessa and Leo's deception. The revelation should have devastated him. Instead, he felt liberated. Every decision he'd made from this point forward would be his alone, untainted by their manipulation. That evening, Penelope Carlton asked to meet him at a quiet bar downtown. "I need to tell you something," she said, her expression troubled. "Something I should have told you years ago." For the next hour, Penelope revealed the extent of Vanessa and Leo's deception. They had targeted Russell specifically because of his business potential and trusting nature. Vanessa had studied his preferences, shaped herself to become his ideal partner, all while maintaining her relationship with Leo behind the scenes. "Why tell me this now?" Russell asked when she finished. "Because you deserve to know the truth. And because," she hesitated, "I always objected to what they were doing to you. It's why Vanessa and I grew apart." Russell studied her face, seeing genuine remorse. "Did you know about the painting?" "Not until recently. Leo kept that secret even from Vanessa until a few years ago. When she found out, she was furious he'd hidden such valuable information from her." As they parted, Penelope hesitated. "What will you do now, Russell?" His answer was simple: "Whatever I want." Chapter 8. The Redemption. The auction of Mountain Retreat, the recovered Thomas Cole masterpiece, became the art world event of the season. Major collectors and museums around the world expressed interest, drawn by both the painting's artistic significance and its dramatic rediscovery story. Russell used his newfound media attention strategically. Interviews about the painting included mentions of his security consulting firm, leading to a flood of new clients. Systems that had been closing their doors to him after the divorce scandal now eagerly sought his services. While preparing for the auction, Russell received an unexpected call from Vincent Russo, a name he didn't immediately recognize. "Mr. Hargrove, we haven't met, but I believe we share a common enemy in Leonard Donato." Russell agreed to meet Russo at his office. The man who arrived was in his 70s, impeccably dressed, with the sharp eyes of someone who missed nothing. "I worked at the Westbrook Gallery in the 1970s, Russo explained. "I was wrongfully convicted of starting the fire that supposedly destroyed the Cole painting. Spent 7 years in prison while Leonard Donato walked free with the painting." "Why come to me now?" Russell asked. "Because you did what no one else could. You exposed him. And because I have information that might interest you." Russo revealed that Leo had been running art theft operations for decades, using various business ventures as covers. More importantly, he still had other stolen artwork hidden away. His storage facility in Danbury, Russo said, sliding a paper across the desk with an address. "Security code is his mother's birthday, August 9th, 1934. I worked for him briefly after prison, before I realized who he really was. Why not go to the police with this? At my age, with my record, they'd never believe me. But you have credibility now." After verifying Russo's identity and parts of his story, Russell contacted Detective Washington with the information. The subsequent raid recovered 3 more stolen paintings worth over $4 million. When the news broke, Russell received a request from the district attorney to testify about his discoveries. During preparation, the prosecutor revealed that Vanessa had accepted a plea deal, agreeing to testify against Leo in exchange for a reduced sentence. "She's provided detailed information about other crimes," the prosecutor explained. "She's quite eager to cooperate." Russell laughed humorlessly. "Of course she is. Vanessa has always known exactly when to switch sides to save herself." The day before the auction, Russell visited Leo in detention. The once confident man looked diminished in his orange jumpsuit, his injured shoulder still bandaged. "Come to gloat?" Leo asked bitterly. "I came to understand," Russell replied. 15 years, Leo. You and Vanessa maintained this elaborate deception for 15 years. Why not just sell the painting decades ago? Leo's laugh was hollow. Because I couldn't. The gallery's former owner recognized me at an art show in 1975, threatened to expose me if I ever tried to sell it. So I created a new plan, build enough legitimate wealth and power to eventually discover the painting myself, with a plausible story of how I'd found it. And Vanessa? I needed someone to help establish my new identity, someone beautiful and charming who could open doors. She was perfect, ambitious, amoral, and attracted to power. Using you as her idea. Actually, you were her perfect mark, successful, trusting, and lonely. The revelation should have hurt, but Russell felt nothing but contempt for the pathetic man before him. You know she's testifying against you? Russell said. Of course she is. Leo's smile was bleak. Vanessa always lands on her feet. I taught her too well. As Russell turned to leave, Leo called after him. The painting's cursed, you know. It destroyed my life. It'll destroy yours too. Russell paused at the door. The painting didn't destroy you, Leo. Your choices did. The auction exceeded all expectations. Mountain Retreat sold for $12.4 million to the National Gallery, which committed to displaying the painting with a plaque detailing its remarkable recovery. After the insurance company's share, Russell received $5.58 million. That night, alone in his apartment, Russell finally allowed himself to process everything. The betrayal had been more complete than he'd ever imagined. His entire marriage had been a calculated deception. Yet instead of breaking him, the revelation had set him free. Chapter 9. The Aftermath. 1 year after the auction, Russell's security firm had tripled in size. He specialized in art security and authentication, with museums and collectors worldwide seeking his expertise. The irony wasn't lost on him. Leo and Vanessa's deception had ultimately led him to his greatest success. Leo's trial had ended with a 25-year sentence. At 65, it was effectively a life sentence. Vanessa, in exchange for her testimony, received 5 years probation and a suspended sentence, but was required to make substantial restitution payments to victims of their financial schemes. Russell had moved on, or so he thought, until the day Vanessa appeared at his office. Your assistant didn't want to let me in, she said, standing awkwardly in his doorway. She looked different, thinner, with simpler clothes and no designer accessories. I don't blame her. What do you want, Vanessa? Russell didn't offer her a seat, to apologize for what little that's worth. She attempted a self-deprecating smile that didn't reach her eyes. Also, to ask for help. No one will hire me with my record, and the restitution payments are impossible without income. You've got to be kidding. I've changed, Russell. Prison changes people. You never went to prison, he pointed out. The threat was enough. Please, just a small loan to help me start over? For old time's sake. Russell studied her face, remembering how easily he'd once been deceived by her practiced sincerity. Now he could see the calculation behind her eyes, the same manipulation, just more desperate. No, he said simply. Russell, please. Let me be clear. I don't forgive you. I don't wish you well. I don't care what happens to you. The only reason I don't actively wish you harm is because you're no longer worth the energy. Vanessa's mask slipped, revealing the cold anger beneath. You think you're so much better than me? You set us up. You deliberately baited Leo with that painting. I did, Russell acknowledged. The difference is you both deserved exactly what happened to you. As security escorted her out, Vanessa shouted, This isn't over. You owe me after what you did. But it was over. Russell had insured it. That evening, at the opening of a new security installation at the Metropolitan Museum, Russell encountered Penelope Carlton among the guests. Vanessa came to see me, Penelope said after greeting him. She's trying to find a way to sue you for some share of the painting proceeds. Russell smiled. She won't find one. I had very thorough lawyers draw up releases after the auction. She mentioned that you turned down her request for a loan. Of course I did. Penelope nodded. Good. She doesn't deserve your help. After a pause, she added, You know, not everyone in my family is like Vanessa. Their conversation was interrupted by Vincent Russo, now Russell's special consultant for art authentication. Sorry to interrupt, Russo said, but there's someone you should meet. The curator from the Rijksmuseum is interested in our new forgery detection system. As Russell excused himself, his phone buzzed with a text from Detective Washington. Thought you should know, Vanessa Hargrove was arrested today for attempting to sell fraudulent art authentication certificates. Some people never learn. Russell smiled as he slipped the phone back into his pocket. Vanessa had been right about one thing. The painting had changed his life, just not in the way she and Leo had intended. The painting that was meant to be his final humiliation had become his greatest triumph. The people who had manipulated and betrayed him had been exposed and fallen. And Russell, who had once defined himself through his marriage and business, had discovered a strength he never knew he possessed. He had not only survived betrayal, he had transformed it into justice. Not through forgiveness, but through the cold satisfaction of seeing his betrayers face the consequences of their actions. As he moved through the elegant museum crowd, Russell caught his reflection in a glass display case. He barely recognized the confident, powerful man looking back at him. The naive, trusting person he'd once been was gone, replaced by someone stronger, someone who would never be victimized again. Some might call his transformation cold or unforgiving. Russell called it survival. In the end, the worthless painting his cheating ex-wife had left him had revealed not just hidden numbers, but Russell's hidden strength, and that was a masterpiece no one could ever take from him. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.